So if you're waiting for the new iPad Air, I come bearing great news because Apple suppliers are apparently preparing shipments for this as we speak, and so that could mean the new Air's launching very soon. Now, what are the main upgrades we could see with this new model? Are we getting OLED on the Air at last? No, not really. Let's delve in. Reliable leaker Mark Gurman has said the main upgrade with the brand new iPad Air is going to be a revolutionary new chipset, because clearly the M2 wasn't powerful enough to run the new calculator application. Now you would think it would make sense for this to get the M3, but apparently Apple's skipping that chipset entirely and bringing the mighty M4 to this iPad Air. So yes, the Pro and the Air will now share the same chipset, which is not the first time this has happened. Very briefly, the iPad Air and Pro shared the same M1 chipset, and ultimately I can understand why they're doing this because the M3 is based on the flawed TSMC M3B process, whereas M4 is based on the much more efficient and easier to produce M3E process. I know that's just a bunch of letters, but basically what you need to know is that M4 is just better for Apple, okay? And especially considering the M4 is in wide circulation right now with it being used in a wide range of products, it makes sense to chuck it in the iPad Air as well. And even if the Pro and Air share the same chipset, the Pro still has other advantages like the new design and OLED, so I can ultimately see this happening. Now, what other changes can we expect apart from a new chipset? Nothing really else has been rumored. This will be the fourth year Apple's essentially reusing the same chassis we first saw with the 2020 iPad Air, which in itself was just a rehashed 2018 iPad Pro. And so you're probably wondering, when is the iPad Pro going to get a redesign? Well, it seems that we can expect OLED to come to the iPad Air in 2026 or 2027. So essentially the refresh after the M4 iPad Air should be the one that gets the new design. And most importantly, OLED from the iPad Pro. Of course, that dual stack display is likely still very expensive to produce, and they can't bring it to the iPad Air just yet, hence why we're getting another minor refresh. But whilst the iPad Air itself may not get that many changes, we might see a new Magic Keyboard launch with this generation. The codenames for these keyboards are R307 and R308, and apparently they're going to bring some of the key upgrades we saw with the M4 iPad Pro's Magic Keyboard down to, of course, the iPad Air. So maybe this could mean a thinner profile, a larger glass trackpad, and most importantly a function row, but I'm guessing the aluminium palm rest will stay a Pro exclusive, just so those will look a little more premium. But honestly, all I want is the function row and the larger trackpad, because assuming this keyboard will be backwards compatible with older models, that allows those still using the M1, M2 iPad Airs and Pros to get new snazzy keyboards. That's awesome news, though I just remembered actually, it's always bothered me for the longest time the Magic Keyboard has a larger camera cutout that does not match the cutout on the iPad Air. So honestly, I would not mind if Apple screwed over older iPad Pro consumers and just gave us new Magic Keyboards that was solely designed for the smaller cutout on the iPad Air, just so it looks cleaner. Yes, I care about small things like this. And you know what else I care about? You clicking that subscribe button. It's free and will bring you the latest of Apple right to the subscription box, so please consider it. It would be appreciated. Join the Saranbyte gang now. It is also weird right now the base iPad's Magic Keyboard has a function row and the iPad Air doesn't, so you desperately need an overhaul for the iPad's keyboard range. And honestly, I would just simplify the range even further by bringing support for a Magic Keyboard to both the base iPad and the iPad Air. They do share very similar dimensions, and so they could quite easily share the same keyboards. They just have to move the placement of the smart connector on the base iPads. I'm also hoping this new Magic Keyboard is cheaper, because it does not make a lot of sense to me that right now, the iPad Air and Pro's Magic Keyboard costs the same. That does not make sense. The cheaper iPad should have the cheaper keyboard, right? But honestly, that's about it for the changes. There's nothing else rumored, and frankly, there's nothing else I can think of that Apple can add to this iPad. I'm not saying it's perfect, but the M2 iPad Air is a solid tablet, and the upgrades people probably want, like OLED, are definitely not coming anytime soon. And so I would not be surprised if they're just giving us a chip refresh, just so it makes things easier for their supply chain, since, as I said, a lot of products currently use the M4, and M2 is probably going to be phased out once the M4 MacBook Air launches. Though I guess we can always look forward to new colors. Yay, I'm so excited. Look at the excitement on my face. Actually, if the colors are vivid and punchy, I would be hyped, but the thing is, for some reason when it comes to the iPad Air, Apple refuses to do that and keeps giving us really pale shades that all look kinda greyish, so I'm assuming the same will continue with the M4 iPad Air. Also, this has kind of bothered me with the M2 models, but the 13-inch iPad Air has slightly thinner bezels than the 11-inch, as well as a slightly brighter display, and so it would be nice if we had feature parity between these two models, but let's be honest, the whole reason there's a difference in the first place is because they're reusing old LCD 12.9-inch iPad Pro panels, because at Apple, the motto is to save the planet and recycle everything. The iPad Air also does not have a flash, whilst the Mini does, but they're also too lazy to cut out a hole for that on the Air. Now, because there's so little different with these new iPad Airs, I would not expect any price changes. It should stay at $599 and $799 respectively. Now, we could maybe see Wi-Fi 7 on these iPads, but that's not really that exciting, is it? Now, release-wise, we should expect this to launch at the spring event, or maybe via press release during the spring. And yeah, I know the comments are gonna say who's actually excited for this refresh. We don't need a faster iPad. To which I would say yes, the M2 and the M1 models are still plenty powerful, but I honestly think Apple's doing this because they want to simplify their supply chain. Timothy is a supply chain genius after all. And with the M4 launching, that should push down the price of the M2 and M1 models. So honestly, it's pretty great news. So even if you're not considering this iPad, it's actually good news for you because older iPads should get cheaper. Also, this just came to my mind, but the iPad Air does have a faster USB-C port than the base iPads, but it's not Thunderbolt speeds, so that's a random change Apple could add to the M4 models. But again, unless you're transferring things very often, that's not going to make a massive difference. And by the way, I would not expect any storage tier changes. We were lucky to get 128 gigs of base storage with the M2 models, and I expect that to be the case with the M4 models as well. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and thank you for watching. So good news everyone, because Mark Gurman finally gives us a more precise timeline for the M4 MacBook Air's release, and to no one's surprise, we should see this launch by March at the latest, which mirrors the M3 MacBook Air launch last year. Now this is much better than Gurman telling us before that the MacBook Air would launch within weeks, because weeks is a very broad time frame. It could either mean 1 or 2 weeks, or 5 and 6 weeks, and so now he's actually given us a month, and that should be March, which yes, does make sense. We usually see Apple launch products during the spring. Now whether we're going to see an actual event for this MacBook Air or if it's going to launch via press release, I'm not sure about. Gurman also says nothing about this. Now the iPhone SE is launching via press release later this weekend. Initially I thought we could see a series of press releases for the new iPads and the MacBook Air this week, but it seems we're only getting one product this week, which will be the SE, and so maybe Apple's going to space things out and we have some press releases right now, and then maybe some other products in March, including the MacBook Air. But yeah, I don't see Apple giving us an event for these releases. Everything they're launching are spec refreshes for the most